If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high-quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hello listeners, I am your speaker Casey, and as many of you may know, I am currently undertaking the Psychology of Coercive Control Master's course at Salford University. I hope that this course will make me more informed and better equipped for future projects and interviews on the podcast. In the meantime, I will be releasing renewed versions of older episodes with updates from previous guests. If you want to find out what I remember from the time of each interview and get in-depth updates from the guests, I've been writing blog posts as I go through older episodes and adding them to my website, cultvaultpodcast.com, which you can also find links to in the episode description. You can find links on my website for support on navigating recovery from cultic abuse, to learn more about how to help a loved one, or become more informed about the subject of cults and coercive control. My emails are still open, and I am carefully curating a list of guests to speak with once I am back to interviewing officially next year. You can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com if you'd like to get in touch. And now, on to today's updated episode.
Scheme, they see it as more like an organic trees and roots, and creating a grassroots movement of spreading Krishna consciousness. So again, they, rather than seeing it in the perspective of how it's potentially manipulative with the pyramid structure of the people, like the kind of the free labor that people are doing, who are at the bottom, and then it starts off with participants, and then participants who leave they lose relevance, and then the participants who start volunteering, they take instruction from the senior devotees. So I was like a volunteer taking instruction from the monk, Devija, the brahmachari, which they call the monks. And then the monk takes various different instructions, because he's living at the temple. He needs to make sure the temple operations are running smoothly, especially in the ashram, because he is a senior monk in the ashram under the instruction of a ashram manager and also the temple manager, who work together. And so there's the ashram manager, there's the senior monks, there's the junior monks who just join into the temple. There are non-devotees who are interested in the religion volunteering, and then there are more committed people who get access to secret classes, which I find really strange. I thought like it would, to me, I think people should just straight up tell you what classes they have, but I got access to secret classes because I started chanting regularly. I got access to their house, to chanting in the house in the morning, because I started doing 16 rounds. They wouldn't advertise this to anyone unless they thought you were ready for it.
And that was going to be kind of my next question, was what was your average day or week when you first became involved with ISKCON? How did it look in terms of your commitments to the movement? And you've then mentioned there that you went on to actually start chanting 16 rounds. So you've told us what the chant is previously, and you're just expected to say that 16 times with your beads. Is that right?
Yeah. So there are 16 beads that you have. The beads name, the name of the beads in Sanskrit is japa mala. So you have these mala beads and you chant Hare Krishna 108 times. Actually, it's 108 beads. So, no, 16 beads, and you chant them 108 times. And then you also have counting beads. So you can, there's the 108 counting beads. No, there's a 108 beads that you move through when you chant Hare Krishna. And then there's like 16 counting beads, like kind of like an abacus. And then as you do 108, you move the abacus to the right, and then you just continue until you get 16. And that will last 1 hour and 1.5 hours. There's also like phone apps that you can use if you don't have physical beads with you. So was your question about the beads, or was it how
it was kind of, the question was, what did your average day or week look like in terms of commitment to the movement overall? I know that the chanting becomes a big part of the time given to Krishna and devotion to Krishna through activities like chanting. So I that was kind of going to be my inroad to that subject around
okay.
high demand for closeness to Krishna.
So this was something that they never really forced anyone to chant, which is interesting, but they would always this was their whole strategy as well, which I found out from listening to Devarita Swami, was to make it look like chanting 16 rounds was normal. And so I have always, because of my inclination to monasticism and mystical experiences and ascetic practices of meditation and all that, and vegetarianism, so I did think it was normal due to my own inclinations. So I would attend their meetings. Usually I would just go to their kirtan, which is their devotional singing. I was offered a volunteer position to lead the kirtan, because I come from a music background. I studied music in high school and did it in university and played in various bands and took lessons. So I was competent to perform devotional music. And I really felt it too, because I was a very spiritual person. So I was singing these mantras, devotional mantras, with a lot of feeling and emotion and sincerity. So they could see that, and they could see I was sincere. And I brought in various melodies that I was learning. So it was very interactive. It felt kind of fun and natural. But I knew that I was just a very enthusiastic person. I kind of was still guarded to some degree that this can end. Like, I thought to myself, my spontaneity could end, and these kind of people wouldn't like it. I kind of had that feeling at the back of my mind.
So
because I was very positive at the beginning.
And the acceptance that you had from these people felt very conditional upon you continuing to be as open-minded and as motivated as you seemed to be at the time you first joined?
Yeah, so they did expect things from me, and they kind of thought it would be natural. And then it kind of came as I don't know, they didn't really say we're shocked, but they would start behaving very microaggressively towards me with their facial expressions and with Bhakti. I told her I would meet, I was meeting some devotees who were Hare Krishna devotees, but just not Mantra Lounge Devarita affiliated or under the control of his under his specific.
Right. So now you've got the us
and then
versus then.
She would react really strongly, and she would say to me, "Oh, you're seeing this person, you're seeing that person." And it was very hysterical, and I was kind of concerned that she was kind of not addressing how she really felt, and instead she was criticizing me in a very passive-aggressive kind of way. Like, it wasn't very direct. She was just kind of giving me some kind of backhanded compliment. And people would do this a lot. They would not directly address things, and they would just shove it under the rug. And I was really frustrated.
Yes, I can imagine, especially because you mentioned before about the anxiety that you'd struggled with.
Yes.
throughout your life, to have people that you are, that maybe, you know, to have people in certain positions, or people that you maybe look up to, or people that you respect, or people that are in positions that you perhaps are striving for, or even just the opinion of anybody else, for people to come across as passive aggressive, it's very unhelpful when you are somebody that is very anxious, that does struggle with ill mental health, to have those signals come across and people not be transparent with you and tell you why they're upset or why they're unhappy with you, and to kind of you know, dance around the issue in the center. That's very, very unhelpful for people that feel that way. So I imagine perhaps you went home at times and felt very unsettled, or couldn't switch off, or felt like maybe you were not devoted enough in your journey to you know, being closer to Krishna, or in your devotion to the mantra lounge in particular. I don't know if that's the reaction that you had to these particular types of behaviors from those in positions of power.
For me, it was almost like a test, because I had the spontaneous affection and kindness and voluntary submissive attitude, which they actually, you know, it's in the scriptures that being a submissive devotee under the instruction of the guru and serving other devotees is the prime example of how a Krishna conscious person should be. So they always kind of, I don't know if they necessarily strive for this ideal, but they promote it verbally, and they constantly pay lip service to this idea. And sometimes they try it to the best that they can, but a lot of the time they can't really live up to these standards of pure submission, pure devotion. So I also took on this attitude very naturally of, yeah, let's be very submissive. Let's be very pure and devotional to this spiritual teaching. Even though Prabhupada, I don't agree with his comments on gays and women, he had a deeper message of love for Krishna, and that's what's going to bring everyone together. And I'm just a humble servant. Like, I started taking on these kind of
traits of explaining away certain things.
Yeah, I would rationalize things as well. Exactly. I would rationalize things as pure devotion and submission.
Right.
And they would do it to themselves. So we would do it to each other, and it almost becomes like so unconscious that it's like you just breathe this very deceptive kind of attitude to life that everything that you're doing, even if you're lying to someone or not telling them the true information, it's just mysterious. Like, that's what Devita said it was, which was something that Devarita Swami would have told him, because I've listened to the Swami lectures, was to just be mysterious, and that's what attracts people to Krishna consciousness. And that was a message of Prabhupada, to spread Krishna consciousness. And this is how you do it in the modern day and age. And yeah, there was abuses, but that's just that's I don't know what he did kind of explain it away, but I can't remember exactly what he said. But he made it sound like, oh that happened. Oh, abuse. Yeah. People are gonna find that out. Like, it was really odd how he would talk about crime and criminal activity and make it sound like it was just kind of some exotic mystery.
Yeah, or inevitable part of existing.
Yeah, like I didn't feel like any guilt or remorse. I felt more like mockery of the act. He was almost mocking the fact that people would find out about ISKCON, and that the jokes, like, the whole time I listened to his lectures, he would always just make it feel and seem like the joke was on the person who was getting indoctrinated into the religion. And that was his whole approach.
That's a very strange approach. Very strange. And problematic.
It's really weird. That's like, they weren't nice to me, but they were nice, in the love bombing. And that was like what I found super disturbing, was that they had the capacity to do very they had the capacity to put a lot of their energy and volunteering into caring for people and into spending a lot of their physical and mental, emotional energy. At the same time, there was something really off about it because it wasn't necessarily sincere
or authentic.
Yeah. And they would have glimpses of sincerity. And it was like, I kind of felt really sad for them as well, because I thought, how could you listen to this guru who's telling people to lie? And you're like a nice person, but you are also you're also like, that you're lying to people, and that's not very nice to do that. They all had various traumas. I have my trauma, but I got to know everyone, and there were, breakups. None of them had their family members living in Melbourne with them. Like, Bhakti's family was in France, Sahail's family was in India, Davida's family in India. So, Jade and Sam had left to New South Wales, so they all were isolated, living together, and even more isolated from each other, but living in the same house. The Maitreyanj people were in the Maitreyanj house, and the monks were in the temple ashram. But at the same time, they would give lip service to submission and loving relationships. But a lot of the time I would watch people talk to each other and I didn't see any love. I saw very fake, almost manipulative flirtation, not really sexual flirtation, but just very put on jokes and about the devotion and this, I'm just doing service for Krishna, and it didn't really feel like a loving relationship or a loving family.
Often conditional is the word that comes up in some of these interviews. The love bombing aspect, it exists as long as you remain devoted to the cause, and if you start to come across with any doubts or free thinking, it almost then turns to, as you've described, passive aggression or
avoidance, deception,
or attacks on your character, by saying, oh, you're not going to go to the Bhagavad Gita sessions anymore, that's because you're an ungrateful person, like you mentioned previously.
Well, I told him I wanted to go to the temple, and then I said, the Bhagavad Gita classes were watered down. And even like the first time I said it wasn't pure enough. Like, it wasn't like kind of deep.
Yeah, so you're trying to use the right unit, not the right, I don't know if that's the right.
Diplomatic. So
you're trying to use positive terminology when you approach somebody with concerns that you have about a certain course that you no longer want to attend. And then from that, you just have your character attacked.
I got criticized as being ungrateful and fickle, and that I, if I can't commit to this, how am I going to commit to something else? So it was very gaslighting, and I told him that I don't want to have this conversation anymore. And then he got really angry and said, oh, maybe then I'll just have to get someone else to attend and cook and volunteer. And I kind of thought she was very resentful. But over time, when I talked to my friend John, who was like friends with Hare Krishnas, but he was in a different sect of Vaishnavism, he told me that the monk's role, which I was never told, the monk's role, Davida's role specifically, is to get people to do service. And so I only found out these things by asking people, by researching, by not talking to Hare Krishna people, or talking to ex-Hare Krishna people, or talking to friends of Hare Krishna people. And then I realized, oh, okay, this is what's going on. They want me to just do service, and then they don't want like people to ask lots of questions. And that's not really his role. He only has limited knowledge, but he would pretend to have knowledge. And a lot of the times I would ask him questions, he would answer them quite well at the beginning. And then over time, he would say, I don't know. He wouldn't say, I don't know, but he would give me very vague answers. And he would never give me a yes or no answer when I asked him, am I a jnani? Like, am I a knowledge seeker, which is the word jnana and the word for knowledge. So am I more of a knowledge-seeking person than a bhakta, which is a devotion-seeking person? And he wouldn't give me a straight-up answer. And so I started getting vaguer and vaguer answers as time went on. And then I brought this up with him, and he had no response. And when I finally left and said that I wasn't coming back regularly, which turned out I just leave permanently. So when I told him that, he actually grimaced, and then he said, we're not pure devotees. And to me, it was like he was ashamed of it, but he was also laughing at his apparent successful attempts of deception. Like, it just felt really strange the way he would laugh at the comment, we're not pure devotees, because I don't care if they're not pure. But he seemed to want to give this message. And then after a few months, I saw one of their advertisements, we're not perfect. And then I just thought to myself, so this is what happens when someone brings up an issue, is that they just put it into their marketing strategy to appeal to more people, like that.
and it almost feels like you can see them laughing at the campaign whilst it's being uploaded, about the irony of them knowing that they're not authentic and as devoted as possible, and that they do that on purpose and deceptively, and almost like, oh, we should make a marketing campaign out of that. Like it after your story and the omission that you were given about them not being pure devotees, it's almost like that campaign's like a slap in the face almost to the time that you had given to that movement.
Yeah, and a few months after, I saw videos and they were doing the exact same thing. And my friend Jen said, oh, you took one for the team. I'm so proud of you, Michael, for confronting the Vija. And I actually felt sick to the stomach when I spoke to him, because he was forcing me to explain why I wasn't attending. Like, I just said, oh, I'm not going to attend anymore. Like, I said it really casually. I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to do other things. And then he kept pushing me. I got really upset because I knew he was trying to manipulate or control my behavior, or
even to do what he thinks is best for you from what he has been taught over a very systematic period of time, through a very systematic set of tools and time.
He would quite often give advice that was not good. And he quite often said things to me like, these people are not like devotees, Michael. When you're out in a work situation, these people are not like devotees. And he was trying to kind of imply that I could only trust devotees, when I kind of I felt very insulted by that comment that, when they're not like devotees, because before I met the Hare Krishnas, I had already established great friendships with, my friends outside of the Hare Krishna, who I would confide in and who I could respect and who respected me, and we had mutual trust and very deep friendships with each other. And for him to say something like that, I thought it was kind of very unintelligent and very ignorant of how people can have positive experiences.
Yeah.
There are equally nice people outside of the Hare Krishna than there are as much as there are inside the ISKCON religion. So the fact that he said that seemed very naive and very brainwash. I don't know the appropriate term, but it was very naive and disturbing almost.
Yeah, it feels like the like, or it just seems like like a very out of place thing to say in that moment of time and in that environment.
Yeah, because I had a bad experience with the job situation that Sam had helped me for one of the junior devotees living at the ashram, and I didn't the job fell through, and then the agent was telling me that sometimes we should be more submissive, and you can't. Not everyone's like a devotee, and not everyone's as good as a devotee, and we're devotees, and we're treat you like with this. I don't know. It just felt like he was preaching to me. Like, it didn't feel like there was a genuine understanding of my situation, and it kind of turned into a very senior junior relationship where he was like the senior who I needed to take instruction from without question, and I was the junior who he was supposed to instruct to do service. Like, that was kind of what it turned into when it kind of, I almost idolized him, in a sense, and idolized the other monk there, Nikeshri, because he was interested in Carl Jung, which I was also interested in, and he read Nietzsche, and he didn't read these, but he just knew of these authors, and he was a Buddhist monk before his Hare Krishna, and he got into Judaism, and I was exploring Judaism. I got into Buddhism, and he started chanting. He read the Bhagavad Gita in 2 weeks, so I was very inspired at the beginning, but then over time the idolization, that kind of image shattered, and it just became disillusionment, and I guess they kind of wanted more commitment from me, and they wouldn't even say it. They wouldn't even say directly, "Oh, we want you to join our movement, to be part of our group. We don't want you to join the temple. We want you to be part of the mantra lounge, because our guru, Devarita Swami, is telling us to do this. And we believe that we're doing it the best way, following Srila Prabhupada. And we'd like to be mysterious and not tell people what our true intention is." Like, he didn't, if he said know the truth, I would have more respect for them. But the fact that they couldn't even, they couldn't even admit to me what they were doing, it was very insulting, because I'm not stupid. I know what's going on. They kind of, they kind of insult intelligence. They kind of, even Divya even said to me that he believes that it's just nicer if someone isn't so analytical. This was before I got to know him deeply, but when we just got to know each other, he told me he thinks it's nice if people are just kind of innocent and submissive, and that way they just do service. So I found that kind of strange, that you don't want people to have, cognitive, competence. You don't want people to have competency in cognitive faculties like critical thinking.
Mm-hmm. But of course, that's of course, critical thinking is a very dangerous thing for groups like this, especially the mantra lounge, because as soon as you incorporate critical thinking, the sooner you decide that you're no longer going to attend any of the sessions, and that maybe that's what happened when you said, "I'm thinking about reducing my time in the sessions," and then didn't return at all.
Yeah, so I used to think cults were good, and because they have such, idealistic people joining, and it's so happy, and the ideas are so interesting of, love and salvation and spirituality
and community, and answers to questions that everybody's had for all of time?
Discipline and solidarity. I kind of thought that's what a cult, like, I knew there was criminal activity, but I thought like, oh, maybe because they're just so amazing, bad things have to happen. Like, because they have so much potential to change the world, things just inevitably terrible have to happen within the group. So it's both horrible and beautiful at the same time. And it's just a more extreme version of what could potentially happen in a normal person's world, where they don't have like a religious practice. So in this more extreme version of a religious practice, you get the more extreme dark side of humanity, and then you get the more extreme positive side of humanity, of people making huge social changes. Like, that's the kind of mindset that I had, thinking, yeah, the bad stuff is allowed to happen because we have good stuff happening. Like, that's what I thought. Obviously, until the bad stuff starts happening to you directly, and then you realize, oh, okay, so this is not so good at all. Like, it sounds interesting in theory on a piece of paper. Oh yeah, the cult, they opened up hundreds of temples, and oh yeah, there was like murders and assassinations. But then when I got involved with them, I started to realize, oh no, like, my emotions are being manipulated. My mental health is, going down the drain from this. None of them really believed in therapy or psychology. Like, I mentioned the fact that I was going to a therapist, an art therapist, and Davina just said, what? Like, she said, what for? Like, she was kind of angry, and I thought it was really odd that, like, what's wrong with doing therapy or even art therapy to have these, like, conversations, like, about what's going on inside your mind. And for them, like, the mind is not important. It's all about devotion. And the mind is not, you are not the body. You are not the mind. You are the eternal soul, the eternal consciousness and servant of Krishna. That is your true identity. And that's only by realizing that, then you can overcome all of the unhappiness that comes with a flickering, fickle mind of only through chanting and being attentive to the name of Krishna, you can experience peace and suffering from mental health, because all of that is ultimately unreal, and the only real thing is the true identity of the person, which is bliss and happiness and being an eternal devotee of Krishna. It sounds nice in theory, but it doesn't, like, to me at least, it sounded good in theory, but in practice it was actually horrible with that group. But even online, like, I've spoken to other ex-Hare Krishnas who, like, are less kind of sympathetic to the movement, and I've seen Hare Krishna servers where people kind of, Hare Krishna's Facebook groups where people kind of, they just repeat the same philosophy and ideology, and it kind of freaks me out a bit, because I think, oh, people still believe this. Even though, like, terrible stuff happens, they still truly believe in this message that Prabhupada was the final, like, the greatest founder of this movement, the founder of one of the greatest movements and the ultimate movement on the earth, and he's going to, he's going to deliver us his message, and following his message to the full degree is going to deliver us from pain, and it's going to deliver us from the material suffering of this universe. People still sincerely, truly believe that he's, one of the greatest people that have ever lived, and to follow his instructions to a T. And I think, like, if there are actual people who deserve that much praise, I think the world would be completely different. And it's there's still the issues that they talk about, they haven't really fixed them. The issues of materialism and of all of this, and of violence and hatred and lack of spiritual, like it's still, they haven't really fixed anything. They just have a very romantic vision of what happened in the past, and also like the ecstatic factors of singing happy music. It's like almost like an extreme version of going to church.
Yeah, but the music and the chanting and the meditation and everything is very ramped up in terms of ISKCON in comparison to a lot of church-based movements that we might discuss on the show.
Yeah, so instead of, going to church worshipping Jesus, they're, playing drums on loudspeakers and singing Hare Krishna for hours and doing it like midnight sometimes. And then on like Tuesdays or Thursdays, they'll go out on the streets of like my city of Melbourne weekly, singing and spreading this holy name of Krishna, which Lord Chaitanya in the 15th century, promoted. So like they have this very elaborate and articulate and romantic narrative about how this is the change that was predicted, that, they're our gurus before Prabhupada's gurus, and Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhakti Vinodya, he said that his dream is to have Western people, French and Russians, chanting the name of Hare Krishna. And because that actually came true, it was kind of a wish that he wrote about in a statement that he made in the 1800s, 1800s. And because that statement has come true, they believe that they're fulfilling a prophecy that, what else previous gurus in the 18th century or in the 19th century said has come true today. And what Prabhupada has done is fulfill that prophecy, and now we're the fulfillment of Prabhupada, because we're following his instructions and we're going to continue this legacy. So they have a very powerful, empowering, strangely, in a strange kind of way, it's like a very empowering, uplifting message, narrative that they tell themselves, and they talk about every day. They will read from the Srimad Bhagavatam and repeat these positive stories that happened hundreds and thousands of years ago, from the time of Krishna, the time of their version of Krishna, their literal, because they believe everything happens literally in their sacred text. So the literal existence of Krishna in 5,000 years ago, they believe that happened. They believe all of the stories of the miracles and the yogis who ascended into exterior realms outside of this planet Earth. They believe this is all happening, and that they were magic. They have powers of Ashwatthama, one of the characters in the Srimad Bhagavatam, has the power of creating nuclear weapons. So they believe this whole mystical, magical, spiritual story, and that they're fulfilling it. And I've kind of researched like Nazism and how, I don't really like, these are more political movements, how political movements have kind of extreme ideologies, or how like Marxist Stalin ideology, they also have this, very kind of totalistic message that this is what the universe is all about, and this is what happened since the beginning of time, and this is going to be the ultimate fulfillment, and this is how it's going to happen, and this is how humankind is going to be saved, and this utopian thing, and where the people who are following this ultimate message, this prophecy, we're fulfilling this beautiful prophecy in this terrible land that's just horrible and there's sex and illicit sex and like for them it's like illicit sex and homosexuality and drugs and depression. We're going to change that. We're going to make the world a wonderful, beautiful place. Like even talking about it now, I feel like no wonder they wanted me to keep coming to their events, because I feel so passionate when I talk about like making positive changes in the world and about spirituality. So even when I had things to disagree with, I could like rationalize them in my mind, and then I could even give answers to people who were asking the question that I was asking, and I could give them good answers. And they really wanted me to keep talking, and I kind of didn't like that because I felt like, not that it was fake, but it was almost like evil. Like I felt like I wasn't doing something positive just by talking positively about the Christian religion. I felt like there were more like, managerial and internal issues that were going on that I wasn't talking about. I was only talking about, how my mental health and other people's mental health and how spirituality was so amazing and how chanting was making such a huge difference in my life and how I stopped watching porn. And it was kind of like, I just felt like a mouthpiece almost. And I was kind of good at it. But I didn't like it. Like I didn't enjoy it almost felt like they were against capitalism or like consumerism, but they were becoming and they were promoting their own version of consumerism.
Mm-hmm. And explaining that away with,
spirituality.
Things like, well, we need these new phones because it's for making sure that all the teachings and sessions run smoothly for Krishna.
Yeah, it was all for Krishna. The phones are for Krishna, the laptops are for Krishna. Marketing on Facebook and Instagram is for Krishna, and lying to people for Krishna, and not telling people that we really want disciples. And Davida would tell me, don't sell books to Indians because they can just go straight to the temple. We want people to go to Mantra Lounge, so just don't sell it to Indians. Like, it was just really weird because he was Indian himself, and I didn't understand the, I couldn't understand the hypocrisy behind what he was saying until I realized that it was the instruction of Devamarita Swami. He's actually very proud and smug about his deliberate deception.
Something I found really interesting that you mentioned earlier on was that the way that certain things were being explained away to you is an ideal that you almost started to adopt at that point yourself. So I've read articles around things that Prabhupada have said publicly that have come across as problematic, especially around women, his thoughts around women, the LGBTQIA plus community, and people of color. He has had some very controversial things to say about those people that you mentioned before. You kind of explained away yourself.
I rationalized them, yeah.
Because of the conditioning that you'd been subjected to by that point, but maybe also because Prabhupada was positioned to you as somebody who was the purest form of devotion to Krishna himself, themselves. I don't know if Krishna actually has a gender.
Well, yeah, because of the transcendental nature of Krishna, he is beyond everything that's in the physical world. Mm-hmm. They refer to him as he, but he is non-human. He is a person, a spiritual person. that contains like the Shakti energy, which is the female energy, and that's also a part of him. So Radha is a part of Krishna's energy. She's the pleasure prince, not the pleasure principle, but the pleasure potency, and he is the kind of the Krishna energy. So everything is a part of Krishna's energy, and his ultimate status in the theology is as a person, a spiritual person beyond the physical limitations of existence. It's like he won't die, he doesn't have disease or death. He's this eternal being, which light just emanates from him because he's so spiritual.
You also mentioned previously about giving up porn, and I know that in your writing to me, you talked about becoming celibate in your journey to be closer to Krishna. So was that something that was encouraged, or something that you independently decided to take up on your own spiritual journey to be closer to Krishna personally?
So that was definitely my personal choice, but it was also, I guess it was influenced by the environment as well, because I saw that there were celibate monks, or monks who said they were celibate. You can't know for sure. So to me, that was very normal, this celibate asceticism life, that ascetic life that monks live, because I'd encountered Buddhist monks in my younger years, and I had researched about that religion and about other monks. So I did that definitely for personal development in my relationship with Krishna, with God, with the divine. So that wasn't forced upon me at all. It was more like the most important thing, I think, was that they just wanted to have an image, and they wanted people to promote their movement, the mantra round. They didn't really care so much about nitpicking, unless it was certain rules about cleanliness. Like, certain people were more strict than others, and other people were more, I guess, individually, there were more stricted people, and then there were more practical people who just wanted to spread the movement. And then I was kind of not really pressured with sexuality. I actually came out to Bhakti and Devija. I said to them I was gay, and they didn't have an issue with that. But I also told them, in addition to that, I said, I'm planning to be celibate. Like, I am being celibate anyway. So then I guess I kind of covered myself. Any kind of sexuality is unaccepted outside of creation in a Krishna conscious marriage between a man and a woman.
I was going to say, did you feel pressured to explain how you were going to rectify the situation of you identifying as a gay man? Did you feel like you then had
none of them had an issue with that. I kind of suspected that Devija may have been gay, or but there was no like definitive proof. Mm-hmm. It was only through like certain behavioral, not like the way he moved or the way he would kind of position his body. And with Bhakti, she didn't. She actually was fine with it. She said that's fine. And she actually asked me, when did I find out, or how did I find out? And I told her. So there were moments of connection between me and the disciples there, because I did do a lot of cooking and volunteering, especially spending time with Bhakti, who was, she was like the head chef of the place. She would never call herself that, but she was the head chef and managing a lot of the mantra lounge activities. So Yeah, I don't know if that answers the question. Sorry. I sometimes get carried away or get sidetracked, but yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Something that you spoke about briefly before was how some Hare Krishnas would take to the streets to do dancing and chanting. And I wondered if you could explain for some of the listeners some of the more traditional things that might identify Hare Krishnas for us, because as somebody on the outside, if you see somebody in the orange clothes, you may associate that person with being a part of the ISKCON movement, and certain hairstyles and
Okay.
so I was wondering if you could just talk through some of the identifying material that we may see on a person that helps us to understand if they are part of ISKCON and why those things exist. You spoke briefly about the clay on the forehead.
Yes.
And I know from your correspondence with me that you were not pressured into wearing your hair in a certain way. But could you just, talk us through all of those identifying things that we might recognize on a Hare Krishna member?
So I would say, excluding the mantra lounge presentation of kind of this modern, hip, urban meditation community, outside of that presentation, excluding that, I did experience these more traditional forms of Krishna consciousness, the ISKCON religion. So when you attend the temple, it's customary to place the tilak, the mark of the clay mark on your head, which is scented with, it's called gopi chandan, which means the dirt of the gopis, the cowherd girls. And you place these marks on your forehead. And what they represent is the two lines, and there's like a leaf on your nose. And it represents Krishna's footprint and a tulsi leaf, which is Krishna's favorite leaf. So this is a mark that people place on their head. They, women and men, women who use the kitchen, they wear saris. They can't wear jeans. If for some reason it's a rule in the kitchen. Monks, where they shave the front of their head, but at the back they leave a ponytail or like a little tail called a sikha, and that it's like a Vedic tradition. Something to do with, I didn't really research this hairstyle that much, but it's something to do with the soul leaving to the top of the head or something. I can't really give too much detail on that. Sorry. So men, they wear the orange monk clothing. I forgot the name of it's there's a specific Indian name. And they also initiated monks. They will, when you see them without their shirt, with just the front, like you can see their chest, you see a white thread called the Upanayana, which is the Brahmin thread that traditionally only birth-based Brahmins can get, but because in Hare Krishna they believe in your varna or your caste is determined by your character. So if people are initiated as men who are initiated, they will have this thread on them. They wear the robes. On the street, they have orange saffron. They call it saffron robes rather than orange. I think saffron in Buddhism, saffron is a color of renunciation, but I'm not sure in Krishna ISKCON. Women wear saris. Generally, they cover their heads inside the temple. It's not very. Some places are stricter than others. I noticed that with the ISKCON temple in Melbourne, people don't really dictate they don't really care about the clothing of other people because of this. I guess it's called Hinduization. You have the young Indians wearing jeans, and you have people with longer hair. Cleanliness is important, so they always shave their heads. The monks, they shower twice a day. They wear the saffron. They sometimes they go out in plain clothing. Traditionally they wear the tilak, and the women wear saris, especially on the Tuesdays when they go out to do the chanting. They have little symbols called cartels, and these symbols make a very distinct, like ching ching ching. That is a special rhythm.
Right? Yeah.
So they use harmoniums. They chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Like, it's a very distinctive, and it's very loud and boisterous and exciting and ecstatic, rhythmic, and the sound of the harmonium is it has that very kind of like a kind of very drony cultural sound to it. It's originally from Germany, but it became popular in Indian devotional music.
It always reminds me of the George Harrison My Sweet Lord song.
Yes, but that song is also a collaboration with ISKCON. He never fully devoted himself to the religion, but he became close with the founder. He donated a temple, the Bhaktivedanta Manor of London, to Prabhupada. It was like a few $100,000, and he just gave it to them.
Wow.
He was also affiliated with Ramana. I don't know if it was Ramana Maharishi, but she was affiliated with the TM. I don't know what something called TM, Transcendental Meditation. That's it.
Okay.
The person who created that.
And Vamana is a significant figure in Hinduism. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
Yeah. The person who created Transcendental Meditation popularized, I guess, the chanting of mantras, similar to ISKCON, but without the whole the Vaishnavism aspect. It was more like a secular version of chanting, and promoted as some kind of science, which ISKCON also does. They promote their ideas of science. So that's he brought like an Indian tradition and westernized it and brought it to the hippies, and it became very popular. I don't know how big it became.
So when you talk of Vaishnavism, I've just had a quick Google here, and it says that Vamana was the 5th of 10 incarnations or avatars of the Hindu god Vishnu. Just going to say that I know that Vishnu is something to do with the ISKCON movement and the controversy around the belief system of Hare Krishna as a venerated figure.
Yeah. So I also spent some time researching this, and the answer's kind of weird, but traditionally Hindus believe that Vishnu is the primary avatar, from which Krishna is the like an 8th avatar. So Vishnu is the avatari, which is the source of all avatars, and Krishna is the 8th incarnation. This is not shared with the Gaudiya Vaishnavas. They don't believe this. They believe that Krishna is the supreme, and they use their scriptures, the Gopala Tarini, the Gopala Upanishad, which is scholars believe that was written later or it was interpolated. And then they believe this is this is like the earliest Upanishad. They believe it's a Veda, part of the Vedas. They also believe that they use the scripture in the Srimad Bhagavatam to prove that Hare Krishna, the name Hare is also another name for Krishna, that he is the source. And that everything that refers to Vishnu or Narayana or all of these other names like Ram, Rama, they're manifestations of Krishna, and he is the source. So Vishnu is actually a part of Krishna, but Krishna is the source of Vishnu. He's the source of Radha and all of Shiva, all of the deities of.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was, when you said the word Brahmana, I was thinking, I know that sounds familiar and I can't remember why. And then it comes back to the 10 avatars, which you've just explained to everybody, which I maybe should have prompted at the start of the episode, but hopefully if anybody listening kind of work out the significance of Hare Krishna inside those 10 avatars, and that's kind of where Chaitana's kind of looked at that and said, actually, do you know what, looking at all of this, Hare Krishna is the one that we should be focusing on as the true deity out of all of these different reincarnations. I guess it's kind of what I was thinking at the start of the episode, but there are a few things that I've read in terms of accusations towards ISKCON or certain pressures that people felt being involved in the movement. And I just wanted to ask you if you'd ever experienced certain things. So did you ever live in any Hare Krishna lodgings, or were you encouraged to? Because I've read a few things around people basically being asked to separate their life from their family and friends and move into lodgings closer to the temple because it's more convenient, and then more and more and more of their time becomes taken up in temple activities and chanting and meditation sessions and all the rest of the stuff that you've discussed today.
So their method was very interesting. Rather than discouraging people, they would say relationships are very important. But this is, another one of those things where they pay lip service to the idea of relationships, but they don't actually know how to involve themselves in healthy relationships. So they're talking about in the importance of parents and the importance of being a role model, of being a symbol for Krishna consciousness to people, and that you can give your association, you can give people Krishna consciousness, but if they're not a Krishna conscious person, they're a karmi, then you don't take their association. So you give, but you don't take. And it was all about this kind of, this balancing act of, for me, like, it felt like almost wanting them to join your religion and just being very nice to them so they could join. And everything else that takes your time, then you just reduce it. So I was encouraged to reduce less important interactions, but it was framed in a way that it was like, oh, this is like, as a mentor, it's okay, kind of for your spiritual development, and you should feel for Krishna consciousness that when you talk less to, and I was actually seeking advice as well. So it kind of, the relationship functioned in this kind of power dynamic where I would submit, and then the monk that I was seeking advice from would give me advice, and I was expected to follow it, because when I didn't, or when I criticized it or questioned it, then I would get, I would receive microaggressions.
And have your character attacked.
Yeah, I would have my character assassinated.
So, something else you mentioned in your correspondence to me that I just wanted to highlight was some allegations of abuse within the section of ISKCON that you were involved in, and that was around children and urine and sexual abuse. And I didn't know if you could talk the listeners through what you meant by those things specifically.
Sure. So I don't have any knowledge on the gurukuls in Melbourne. Like, it's not, the schools are quite unofficial, so they're not advertised as Krishna conscious schools. I think one of them was shut down because they didn't have enough funding in New South Wales. But there is a history of abuse, especially in the gurukuls, the special schools for Krishna conscious children in India, and also in, I guess, early West Virginia, when it was kind of during the Kirtanananda period. There was a lot of abuse, and so the knowledge that I received was through documentaries about children's personal experiences, spoken about as they were adults. So there was urine people, the kids who, this is not in relation to the Melbourne temple. The kids, they were like American kids. So these American kids would talk about, while the adults would talk about the experiences of children when they would oversleep. They would have if they peed in their pants, for example, they would have to wear their put on their sleeping bags that were wet. Said he got anally raped. This is like really graphic, but sorry about the details. But yeah, one person said he was anally raped. Another, a girl said that she was exploring because she was so depressed that the girls, and they were being sexualized at such a young age. As little girls, they were doing experimentation with other girls, so they were engaging in homosexual activity as children because they were being exposed to sexual abuse but from adults. And then, like, some of the stuff was really out there. Like, someone almost jumped off a window, and nobody said anything to him. The kids there were kids in India who were suffering from diseases because there was malnutrition. There were cockroaches in the food. And the most recent, this happened more in the 80s, prominently exposed as happening in the 80s, but it's still, a lot of the stuff happens today. For example, like Bhakti Vijayapurna Swami, he has hit children and abused them. Lokanath Swami has sexually harassed a girl, touching her vagina or the front, like while her pants were still covering her clothes, like her body. And he's still being worshipped and venerated today. He's still singing kirtans. Bhakti Vijayapurna Swami, who's abused boys physically abused boys in the Gurukuls in India. He's actually visited Sydney. I've seen his video. I was actually quite disturbed that they would let in people like this because there's evidence against them.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
It was very disturbing. And I guess it's like, Tom Cruise advertising Scientology. You think people have a sense of, discernment about who they promote and who they bring onto their shows, or the type of religions they talk about. But that's not the case. Tom Cruise, yes, he's a spokesperson for Scientology, and he truly believes in it. And then you have these Hare Krishna temples who bring in, child abusers to the temples, and they speak and give lectures. And then in India, you have, child abusers, child molesters who initiate disciples. So it's just
what you said about being surprised that these people are invited into certain countries or invited to visit to give motivational speeches or to make appearances and to give lectures and to bolster attendance numbers for certain events. It is surprising that you say that, because just to type ISKCON child abuse into Google brings up krishna.org, ISKCONtruth.com, ISKCONchildprotection.org, ISKCONnews.org, New York Times articles around the Hare Krishna movement details past abuse at its warden schools. There's so much in just typing that, which is not very common really amongst groups that have been labeled cults. It's not. Sometimes the browsers, sometimes the search engines are scrubbed of negative articles or negative headlines or negative websites, or people pay for promotions to have their very positive reviews and very positive websites of certain movements and sects to feature way, way, way above in the first, second, third, fourth, fifth pages of Google. I mean, I don't know if I've ever been to the fifth page of Google.
That's what happened with Radhanath Swami, because he was associated and implicated in the murder of Sulochana Das as a as like a person who associated with, who planned the assassination. He, an accomplice. And he, because there was so much negative information, he paid a PR team thousands of dollars to promote his positive information and lectures. And now when you type his name in, Radhanath Swami, you don't see anything about the murders of Slochana. You see all of his talks.
Yeah, a perfect example.
At TED, with other, with other priests from other religions, with the Dalai Lama, with, his disciples. I can't remember her name. Like Janavi, who's done music with Willow Smith. You see Will Smith, who talks about the Bhagavad Gita. It's actually very clever that what they're doing to clean up their image. They're still the same cult, but it's the image is different. The presentation is different.
So
they're like an urban yoga thing now.
How was it that, because you've mentioned that you decided that you were going to reduce your time within the lessons and teachings and sessions that you were attending, but how was it that you finally, when did you leave, as we go into the last couple of questions of the interview?
I left in March 2021.
And it was a seamless transition from attending to not attending. Were you kind of asked to come back at all? Were you encouraged to continue trying to?
I was contacted after telling Devija that I was just busy. And then I also stopped going to the temple because I noticed that Devamrita Swami had told Devija to kind of shun me from the temple because I noticed the security guard was looking at me strangely. And I also found out later that people who were associating with other groups like the Gaudiya Math group, they were also being stared down by the security when they went inside the temple. So it was a very uncomfortable transition, to be honest. They would call me, I would not respond, and then I saw messages on my phone. I did initially say that I was just going to do something else than be with other people, and then I would get passive-aggressive comments like, oh, you're free to do whatever you want. And I didn't feel like that was there was no sincerity in that. There was just kind of some kind of resentful lack of transparency, to be honest. It was like a strange sincerity. I don't know what to call it, but this would happen, like a lot of uncomfortable reactions, like the hysterical reaction from Bhakti about, oh, you're joining this person and that person, and then Devita saying, oh, you're free to do whatever you want. And
right, kind of like whiplash. You didn't really know which way to go. Kind of one person says one thing, one says another.
And then Jane would say, oh, are you coming back to the Nectar of Devotion class? And I was really uncomfortable because I didn't want him to know that. I didn't feel like it was in his place to tell me if I believe something, why are you telling me to join it again? Especially when I said the reason why I was leaving. So then, Devija would ask me, even after I told him that I was regularly going, because I didn't say I'm going to stop permanently. I said I would stop doing things that you tell me to do because I feel like I have to follow it. I will just do what I think is right for me. Mm-hmm. I didn't even say I was going to stop completely. I just said I will go if I decide to go, not if you expect me to go. And I don't think she was happy with that. But then he did contact me again to go to further events. But I did, he contacted me to go to some kind of camp, and I was just very over it and skeptical. And
yeah,
after that, I just blocked all of their numbers.
Okay.
because I didn't want people to be them to contact me at all. Like I just had to like detox. It was very painful, but it's still very like kind of painful now. So yeah, like I just had to detox and not, talk to any of them again.
I think that's a common thing that's talked about on this show, that some of the ways that people have left their movements have been through just going no contact and having that time away from the group to formulate your own thoughts and ideas, and to get a good night's sleep and a good meal and a good rest, and to formulate small ideas that you've had into full-on streams of consciousness that maybe hadn't had the chance to develop because you'd been involved in very systematic control methods. So the fact that you said there that you just needed to detox, which was painful, but it was something that you needed to do in order to break away from the group, is something very poignant that we should take away from this episode in terms of what people can do for themselves if they are in similar positions and thinking about taking a step back from their high demand group. Understand that it may be painful, but know that other people have been through the process, and it can be successful.
Yeah, I am lucky because my housemate is really supportive. I didn't really have massive conversations to her about my religious experiences, but I invited her to one event. She wasn't interested in the future ones, but like she gave she supports me while I live here. She offered me a place to stay when I was struggling. And like rent wise, I pay less than the full amount of rent. So she's been really helpful.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your support and your help.
Yeah, so having, people who support you does help. And I kind of understand why someone would join a cult, because I was in that situation. Curiosity is one thing, but then also lacking positive relationships. Like for me, it's estrangement from family, sexual abuse in the when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
But having negative trauma, having traumatic experiences, will lead people more closely into making decisions like joining a cult.
Absolutely, yeah.
If they have psychological difficulties, anxiety, depression,
mm-hmm.
mental health problems, for me, I still struggle. I'm not perfectly sane in my mental health. I'm not perfectly happy, but I do try to keep myself doing things that are healthy for me and that don't involve these extreme methods, because I can be a very extreme person. So I'm very aware now that take a step back before I do something like the Krishna thing.
And something that you have done since leaving ISKCON is that you've gone on to read and research and educate yourself on the practice, on the different belief systems in place within ISKCON, on the history. You've given yourself such a vast amount of information to process the experience that you've had, but also the text, the Bhagavad Gita, and everything around that is used within this movement. You've gone away and you've done all of that independent research to make sense of it yourself and also understand it on a deeper level, away from the ashrams and the temples and the gurus and the monks and all of the ISKCON hierarchy and labels and system, but you've still been able to give us an in-depth insight into that knowledge that you gained primarily after you'd left the group, which says a lot about the teachings that the group gave you whilst you attended, but also on your ability to be a critical thinker, to have the forethought to move yourself away from this group and cut off all contact, and then also say, I'm still interested in either what the group was trying to accomplish with me as a member or what the group intrinsically believes in. And I will understand that if I do independent research on my own terms, in my own time, in my own space, in my own environment. And now you've been able to come here and give us all of that information alongside the experiences that you had primarily around the Mantra Lounge, which may not transpire with other ex-ISKCON members who are listening, who have had slightly different experiences, who live in different parts of the world. But as you mentioned at the start of the episode, certain groups within ISKCON may be more cult-like than others. And this is a great example of those cult-like methods of control and coercion, manipulation, undue influence that are given or put on certain members within the Mantra Lounge itself as almost a separate sect of ISKCON. So it's almost like you've got kind of Hinduism as an umbrella and the Hare Krishna movement as one sect of that umbrella, and then almost, arguably, the Mantra Lounge as a separate tangent to ISKCON overall. It feels like they're trying to kind of make their own footing in the environment of ISKCON and the space of the Hare Krishna movement. But what I wanted to ask before we finish today was about advice that you would give to others who may be in similar situations, who are thinking of moving away. I know there is the text Killing for Krishna that you mentioned before we hit the record button. That is a text that has been recommended to me for some reading for research and resource material. But apart from the Killing for Krishna book, is there anything else that you might recommend for people who are looking to do what you have done with moving away from this particular kind of movement?
So for people specifically to understand just what's going on with the Krishna thing, the Krishna cult, the Krishna religion, I think people, I would recommend a book by Nicole Karapanagiotis, I think that's her surname, called Branding Bhakti, because it goes into Radhanath Swami's movement, Hridayananda Goswami's movement, and Devarita Swami's Mantra Lounge, and how they present the Krishna religion, how they market it to people in the modern day and age. It's written by an academic, a scholar of religion, and she actually joins the people. She joins them, and they know what she's doing, and she does volunteering, and she analyzes and writes about how Krishna consciousness is marketed to Indians, how it's marketed to Westerners, how its theology is being applied today. There's another book called by Edwin Bryant. I can't remember the name. I think it's the Hare Krishna movement. Not too sure. There's a series of essays in that. I haven't read that, but I know I've taken classes with Edwin Bryant, who used to be Hare Krishna, but he's now Gaudiya Math. It's like a different sect of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And then there's the other than Killing for Krishna by Henry Doktorski, which I highly recommend because it's factual. I don't recommend Monkey on a Stick because it's semi-fictional. It's based on fact, but a lot of their information was added in for dramatic effect. Dialogues were placed that never actually happened. So I don't recommend that. It's more of a sensationalist semi-fiction book. And then there's 11 Naked Emperors, which is a book by Henry Doktorski as well. And it goes into the GBC period and the kind of the political dramas that happened between the senior disciples of Prabhupada, how the movement kind of deteriorated and how it's being perceived within the religious movement today, and how kind of the interaction between ex-cult leaders and current cult leaders, and then conservative elements and liberal elements, and elements that think that they were heretical, and elements that think they did a lot of great things. It's a very kind of well-rounded book that explores multiple perspectives and I highly recommend it. I kind of tried to read it through it quickly, because I was kind of doing a little, game of just read as much as I can within a few days. It's like a little competition, so I don't recommend doing a speed read. There's a lot of dense information, so it's good for people who want to understand more the political side, that particular book, The 11 Naked Emperors.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much for giving us such an extensive list of resources to go and look at if it's something that people feel is needed for them personally. I really appreciate your time today, Michael, for giving us such an insightful and extensive introduction to the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not just from your personal stance, but also from a historical stance and a philosophical stance and a psychological stance too. I think it's going to be a very interesting episode for people who listen all the way through in understanding how the Eastern philosophies and mysticism that you were interested in was when you were younger influenced and impacted your decisions to be included in the Hare Krishna movement when you were older, but also why it no longer became something that you were interested in pursuing when the high demand, manipulation, coercion, and undue influence started to take its toll on you as an individual. And I think that speaks volumes to people who may have also decided independently to, contact a movement or phone up a movement or go and attend a session. Maybe people who weren't born into movements feel more responsibility or guilt on themselves for making that independent decision to go and be part of a movement. But what you've told us today is that people can be successful in cutting off contact, in taking that space away from a certain group, researching and understanding intrinsically the belief system or practices in place for that group, but also all the other side of the commentary that comes with it, the salacious headlines that come from articles that label certain movements, cults and sects and groups that use manipulation and abuse as tools of control. And I think you've given a very wide variety for people to walk away with today and consider in terms of what they consider cults or what they consider their time spent in certain movements to equate to. And that's really important. So I just want to say a massive thank you for your time today, Michael. A massive thank you to your housemate as well for being supportive of you and your transition out of this group. And hopefully some people can take some positive messages from this and understand that even if they have independently contacted or walked into a movement's environment and become more and more involved over time through certain tools of coercion, that there are ways to rectify that situation and that the certain individual themselves is not to blame. So thank you so much for your time today, Michael. I know it's very early where you are, so I'm going to let you go and get some sleep at some point. So thank you so much for your time today, and I really hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time you spent with me and the fantastic questions, and I hope anyone who listens to this is offered with the information that is necessary for them to make an informed decision. And hopefully it was very entertaining and interesting for everyone listening. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, Michael. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, see you, Casey.
Bye. That is the end of this week's episode. If you'd like to get in touch, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram @cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker, Casey, and this has been the Cult Vault.